Chris Swick here, your host from the depths of darkness to the light of success. Today I have Emelyn with me, who's from the GTA area of Toronto and Canada here. Would you give him a little bit about tell him a little bit about yourself, Emelyn?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you, Chris, for having me.
Yeah.
My name is Emelyn, and right now my position is working as a mental health support worker at an organization that's focused on social rehabilitation. But I am also a consumer survivor. I have my own history with mental health concerns and trauma, and I would love to talk about my navigation through the mental health system, I guess, in general, and as well as my personal practices and a little bit of, I'll be answering any questions you have for me.
That sounds good. So what was life growing up like when you were young? You grew up in Peru, I do believe, wasn't it?
That's right. I was born in Peru. I grew up in the city of Lima,
And that's
and
the capital, right?
that's
Lima? Okay.
yeah, the capital of Peru. And it was a very much different lifestyle than from here. We didn't have a lot. It was pretty much I grew up in poverty, but with a lot, like a wealth of family connections. My mom had, for example, 12 brothers and sisters, and there was always a great amount of people connecting, communicating. So it was quite the childhood, but within that there were some negative experiences as well that were not the best.
And what were some of those negative experiences you that discovered that happened to you and stuff like that?
Sure. So at the age of 3 years old, I remember vividly I was unfortunately sexually abused by a family member. But that went on from the ages from 3 to 11 years old by different members of the family, as well as a neighbor. But growing up in a society that was very much strict in Catholic beliefs and where anything regarding sexual content was forbidden, I carried all those secrets from that many years, because I had the fear of being punished or being looked at like I was doing something wrong. And essentially, I grew up thinking that everything that happened to me in those years was just ultimately all my fault. So it was very, very hard to live like that, but not only with those experiences, but with the experiences of poverty, to the religious dogma and terrorism that was happening at the time when I was growing up.
What was going on there at the time? When was this? Was this in the 80s or
Yeah.
90s?
Yeah, so towards the late 80s, there was a terrorist group called the Shining Path who were, they just formed this military group that were against the government at the time. And so I
So something
remember.
like a militia then, pretty much, eh?
That's right. That's right. And the news over in South America is reported very differently from here. And you would see things that you wouldn't normally see on TV.
And
But
what do you mean by that? How is it reported differently?
so at the time when I was there, and this is back in the late 80s, there was a group of terrorists that got hold of a building. It was a Nestle building in Lima where my dad worked as an accountant. And they had gathered all the workers to come out, and they began to make demands from the president in camera. And as they said demands, they would unfortunately execute people live on camera. And I remember seeing all that. And that
Like
wasn't
you would
just
see this on the news or you saw this in person?
in the news. The
Okay,
news
okay.
was like, yeah, it was very graphic and very raw.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was part of growing up there.
So that must have instilled some like really vivid memories and stuff like that. Like, do you have troubles later on in life dealing with those thoughts and those vivid memories and stuff like that, seeing all these things?
Oh, 100%. I remember that caused a series of just years of nightmares, sleep paralysis, and to the point that my grandparents had to take me to healers in order for me to kind of find some peace in order to sleep well.
Oh, wow.
But
So
it
what did
was
these healers do for you then?
So what happened is they would take me to a healer who would do a ritual using crystals and prayers and just basically bless me so I would have a much better sleep, and I wouldn't be bombarded with so much negative thoughts. And that was like the cultural way of holistically dealing with problems.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And
Yeah.
back to your you were molested and sexually abused as a child and stuff like that. So when did you actually come out about that, or try to come out to your mom? Was it your mom that you first tried to come out to about it?
Yeah.
And how did that go? Like,
It was very difficult. It was at the age of 11, and this is around the time where I found out that we were going to be traveling to Canada and essentially settling here. And then I figured I have nothing to lose and nothing to be scared about, because I'm going to be taken off on a plane and I don't have to deal with the repercussions. So I let her know, and ultimately she believed me, but my grandmother did not. And
because
so
one of them was like your grandfather that was doing it too, one of the gentlemen or men, right?
that's right. That's right. So that was my grandmother's partner.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was very difficult for her to believe that, the father of her children would do such atrocity. And she had a really hard time believing that. But because I was living with my grandmother at the time, she had taken me to a psychiatrist, and I was given medication and pretty much lived like a zombie for a year.
This is at the age of 11 this started taking
That's
the
right.
medication?
So yeah, so between I think it was a year and a half. A year and a half I was on medication, so almost close to 11. I'm trying to remember the timeline between 10
Yeah.
and 11. Yeah. And that just caused me to flunk in school and just not be present.
And this was in Peru, or is this in Canada now at this point?
This was in Peru.
Okay.
Yeah, this was in Peru. So yeah, and it was very it felt freeing to have my mother on my side, but at the same time it was soul crushing for my grandparents.
For
So
sure.
conflicted in both.
So what happened then with your grandmother and your grandfather then? Like, did you ever speak to them again after this, or?
Yeah, actually, that kind of went under the rug. That period of time, after a few months of me taking medication and seeing a psychiatrist weekly, it was like the issue dissipated and everybody acted like it was normal.
Like
Um,
it was okay
and
sort of
like,
thing?
yeah, like it passed and it was okay. And I was allowed to spend time with my grandfather. And so it almost like it added a sense of normalcy. And this is very frequent in different cultures. Like here, if you were to go to a police officer or you called or, you say I've been harassed or somebody did this to me, there will be actions taken.
Yeah, they
But
do take actions for sure.
that's right. But in South America, at the time where I was growing up, there was nothing that could have been done if my mom went let's say, to the nearest police station to try to
And
make.
why is that though? Like what's different? Like why is it because it's run a lot differently than other countries, I guess?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like why don't they take that seriously?
I'm not sure. Like
Okay.
this is back in the 80s, so I'm sure a lot of things have changed. But back in the day, you can bribe police with money to do whatever, to get out of a ticket and such.
Yeah. Yeah, it
So
seems that that's a lot like that down in the South American, Central American countries and stuff like that, and even up into Mexico and stuff like that too.
for
Just see that
sure.
on you see it on shows, you see it in real life, and it's like the cartels and all that stuff. They bribe people with everything.
Oh, for sure. And even domestic abuse back in the day, there was nothing that you could do except, live with it at the
Oh
time.
wow, and that must have been really like that must have been fucked with your mental psyche and stuff like that. Excuse my
Oh,
language.
oh my goodness, 100%. I grew up with like no sense of self, absolutely no boundaries when it came to relationships. It caused me to be socially awkward for years.
How
Um,
so? Like how were you socially awkward? Like would you have troubles talking to other men growing up and stuff like that?
Oh yes, yes. I didn't develop in sexual maturity because I was so afraid to touch that topic. So
Yeah.
uh, I think at the age of 19 is when I became curious and started developing relationships. But within those relationships, there came a lot of sense of abandonment and mistrust, and because people had violated my boundaries in the past, I had absolutely no boundaries and didn't know how to function. So I was very needy. At the same time, I was just very emotional. And so whenever I developed relationships, it was very hard for me to be in one. And I didn't know how to manage them, how to handle them. I never grew up looking at a relationship that was healthy. So I
Okay.
was all over the place. Yeah.
And was that just because of all the abuse you went through as a child? And is that what it stems back to then?
It originally stems from there, but
Yeah.
also seeing the dynamics of relationships in my culture where men were able to treat women however they wanted to, and the women were there to serve at every time.
So that's the way you thought it was to be then, sort of thing. Was that the way you started doing things in your relationships when you started getting sexually mature, like you said?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I was very confused as to how I'm supposed to love freely. I love with a sense of attachment, and acted like if I was left alone for too long, I would become confusedly overwhelmed and needed that person. So I became like suffocating, but I didn't realize I was doing this. I
Okay.
just didn't feel loved. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
So at what point did you guys then come to Canada? How old were you then?
It was, I think I was in November 89, so I was still 11, and I came to Canada absolutely not knowing what the culture would be like or what the weather would be like, and the school system was 100% different than where I was. I grew up in an all-girls Catholic school.
Okay, so is that the way it was in all over Lima? Like boys went to boys school and girls went to girls, with girls sort of thing? Or did they have mixed schools too?
They have mixed schools, but the mixed schools were free, so you didn't have to pay for education.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but when my father was here in Canada, because when I grew up there, my father came here to Canada to work and essentially to bring us here. So he would send money for my monthly school fees, and I was
Yeah.
sent to all girls Catholic school. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And were you an only child?
No, I actually have one brother and I have three sisters. So I'm the fourth child, and we all have our experiences too. So in a way, it was later on in years where we were able to connect and talk about things
And
that
put like
we
pieces
realized.
of the puzzle together sort of thing too, eh?
Exactly, and we really learned that we weren't all alone. We thought we were, but we weren't.
So
So
this happened, and I know you can't speak for your brothers and sisters, but this happened to them, some of the things that happened to you as well, eh?
yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So what kind of things, like, so you came to Canada, where did you guys land when you came to Canada then?
Toronto, straight
Oh,
to Toronto.
yeah.
Yeah, the multicultural city, and
It's very diverse here. Even back then, like growing up myself too, like there was so many cultures, even in the subdivision I grew up in too. It was amazing. Like there was Latino, there
mhm,
was, African American, you know,
mhm.
Asians, everyone. It was an awesome culture I grew up in too. Especially the school I went to as well. It was awesome, just growing up in that diverse culture. So I learned a little bit of everything.
For sure, for sure. And there wasn't much diversity where I grew up. So when I came here, not only was it diversity in people, but diversity in every single thing that I looked at. Like for example, I grew up where we didn't have a lot of money, so we were always eating things at home, and anything like chocolates or chips, they will come once in a blue moon.
Yeah,
And
it was like
and
that Sunday night movie snack or something.
yeah. And then I came here and I walked into a convenience store, and it was like walking into like just a toy store. It was like, oh, look at all these flavors, all these colors. It was just amazing.
Yeah,
Uh, so certain things were like great, and certain things were cost a little bit more for me to get used to.
for sure. So
Yeah.
what was it like then, that change, that transition into the school here then? You said it was a lot different than down there. Like what was it like your first day sort of thing when you went to school here?
Yeah, first of all, I didn't understand what anybody was saying. All I knew was basically the
You didn't know any English at this point either, eh?
very little, because it is a second language in Peru and I did learn it in school, but
Okay.
I learned it in a very slow way. So when I came to Canada and everybody's speaking super fast, I had no idea what anyone was saying. And I remember my second period class was French. So I was even more confused because I had never learned
Now there's
French.
another language thrown into the mix.
Another one, right?
Yeah.
So, and then the whole structure of like first break, second break, and or lunch, we didn't have that structure. We only had break once a day. So
Okay.
I was very confused. I went to school with my brother at the time, so we were just hanging together, trying to figure out what we were supposed to do.
So did you feel alone though that first day? Did you make any friends, the first little while, or were you, bullied or anything like that, really? Or
When I came here, like I came straight to grade six. I didn't have any friends the whole grade six because I couldn't communicate. Uh,
okay.
in grade seven, I started speaking a lot more. I started, becoming friends with other Spanish speaking people, so I would get help. But at the same time, due to my accent and due to, I guess, being a little bit socially awkward, I got bullied quite a bit in grade 7.
Okay.
And really affected me.
And what were those experiences like? Like,
Oh,
what?
it was horrible. It was horrible because I was, my mom worked really hard to provide for us, but she couldn't afford things with brand names. So she bought a lot of stuff at the store Byway back in the
Hey,
90s.
I used to love that store going there as a kid.
Yeah, it was fun. It was great. I loved it. But like back in the day, I didn't appreciate the value of just having rather than just focusing on what others had. So,
For sure.
yeah, so I was picked on quite a bit with that. And I began to fake belly aches. I began to fake sickness. And essentially, my mom ended up talking to a principal in school and telling them what I was experiencing. And they completely dismissed the issue. Um,
It's crazy what they do, and that bothers me even to this day because you can tell when kids are bullied or being made fun of and stuff like that. Like I have friends' kids and stuff like that, and he was always just I'm not going to name names, but he was always like he would always fake being sick. He didn't want to go to school in the morning. It was because people are picking on him and stuff like that. You find out down the road and stuff like that. You know, it's and they don't do nothing about it. I find there's very little done in the school system still to this day. They're getting better and better with the bullying and stuff like that. But I find
Mhm.
there's a lot of work to do still, in my opinion, too. So
Oh, there's so much work because I think they focus on the fact that bullying is inappropriate and it's unhealthy. But I don't think they focus on the fact that the bullies are the ones that need the rehabilitation.
yeah, the
Yeah,
both sides need like
yeah,
you being bullied as the victim, and then the one that's doing it, they both need help. You're right. Like
yeah,
and they
yeah.
don't focus. They only focus on the one that's getting bullied, and they don't focus on the bully.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So what happened? And did none of these things happen? You said it was all dismissed and stuff like that. Then,
Yeah,
eh?
it was all dismissed, and I practically begged not to go to that school the next year. So my mom moved me to another school, and we had to move places. So at this school, I thrived a lot better. I was able to communicate much better. I learned from past experiences. I formed friendships. And I think it was for the first time in grade 8 in the school system here in Canada where I actually felt like I belonged. And it
Yeah.
was very comforting. But going to grade 9, that's when my decline in mental health just went downhill after that.
And why?
Yeah.
What happened there? What was
Um,
the decline from? Do you know?
yeah. When I went to grade 9, I began to be bullied by a couple of girls that were in grade 11. And again, it was
And what were they picking on you for?
oh, it was silly things like the way that I said things in my accent, the way that I dressed, or I think that what did it for me is I bought a jacket when I was in grade 9, and it happened to be very similar to the girl that was bullying me, but I wasn't aware of that. And due to that, she picked a fight with me, and I ended up being expelled from school after that fight.
Oh, you got
Uh,
expelled for that
I got expelled.
in
Yes.
grade 9. And so what happened after that then?
So after that, my mom again had to find another place to go because I wasn't allowed to go to that school,
Yeah.
and we moved to Mississauga. So, and I ended up going to high school in Mississauga, and that's when I found out about alcohol, about marijuana, and all the things that I could do behind my parents' back. And that's,
And then what was it like that first time, like that first sip of alcohol and that first puff of weed and stuff like that? Like,
oh, it was
was that like the, God's gift there to you, eh? Just take all the
yeah.
pain away and stuff, eh?
Oh, 100%. You know, you took it, you were in a state of happiness with your friends and sharing, you forgot about everything. So I just began to focus on getting that high all the time to run away from my problems. And whenever my parents would catch me doing these things and don't let me go out or anything like that, I became like just extremely depressed being indoors, and the negative thoughts began. And then I
And
would,
this is when you couldn't get out to get your alcohol or your marijuana and stuff like that?
yeah, or even hanging out with my friends because that's where I would get it, or that's where I
Yeah.
would go. So that's when I think I began to feel suicidal. Just around the ending of grade 9, when I was not able to find that form of what do you call it? So
Relief even.
yeah,
Yeah.
So that's when everything began. And then I started to look into how am I going to end my life, because this is just not working for me. So I went through a period where I began overdosing on over-the-counter medication, and it didn't happen once; it happened many times. And my parents had to, drop me off at the hospital, pick me up, and this went on for years. Yeah.
Through your whole high school sort of thing?
Oh yeah, I had
Yeah.
a psychologist come see me once a week. I had a counselor that I spoke to, but it almost seemed like at the time when I was getting this therapy in school, whatever I would say to them, they would repeat it back to me.
Yeah.
And that was the end of the session. There wasn't any,
You
you know,
didn't find any help sort of thing. It was like they were there to basically listen to you and then sort of repeat back to you in different words and somewhat, eh?
yes, and they would look at me with like this concerned face, and it would rather than help me, it would demean me, or just it didn't feel like they were connecting with me. I didn't connect with anyone, and I developed unhealthy habits, eating disorders, just not I had a really distorted concept of who I was supposed to be. And not only did I deal with drugs, but I also started screwing up my whole dietary consumption. I would not eat for days, or I would throw up the food that I was eating. Just very unhealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you get into any other drugs, or was that where it sort of drew the line sort of thing with the marijuana and alcohol?
Well, I tried many drugs, nothing hardcore. I think
Yeah.
like speed and psychedelics and whatnot. And I think the turning point for me with drugs was I was at an apartment with a friend of mine, and we were sitting with a person that used to get our drugs for us. And a guy ended up knocking on the door frantically. And when we opened, he was covered in blood, and he had gotten into a fight. Once our dealer dealt with that issue, he came back and offered us some crack. And I remember sitting there feeling super scared about what just happened. And I couldn't smoke it. I was not in the right frame of mind to try this.
Yeah.
And I never went back after that day. And I think, had the guy not come in screaming full of blood, I think I would have tried the drug because I was
Yeah.
calm, but I'm glad that I didn't. Sometimes I think kind of like the universe, sends you
For
little
sure.
signals to help you, right? So,
Yeah, most definitely. So like that's awesome that that happened though then, because I myself went down the road with crack cocaine and
mhm.
cocaine and all that stuff, and it's not fun, like I know all too well about the self-isolation of that and stuff like that, and it sounds like you got into a lot of self-isolating and stuff like that later, like in towards your high school and stuff like that, in your high school life and stuff like that too.
For
How's
sure.
that like?
Mhm.
And how did you deal with that though? Like,
So the way that I dealt with it is pretty much whenever I would overdose on something, I would end up in the hospital for a
now would
few.
you do this for the attention too, or were you intently trying to kill yourself at the time?
I think a few times as a young teenager, I did it for not only because I wanted to soothe the pain and essentially I wanted to end my life, but I thought if I am in this position, maybe my parents would pay attention and I actually tried to help me. So it was, in a sense, a form of attention,
Yeah.
uh, with the need to actually want to disappear as well. I think as I got older, I actually did it with the intention of just ending everything. And there was a couple of times where I got very close. And there was actually CPR done and everything on me when,
Now was it always medications you used all the time?
yeah, medications and alcohol years later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mixing both. Yeah.
So where would you say your bottom was then? What was your rock bottom?
I think my rock bottom, oof, I'm thinking about it and it's like, it gets to me. It wasn't that long ago, to be honest with you. My rock bottom was last year. Now I've been in the path of taking care of myself mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and unfortunately, sometimes things happen and you don't realize that you're going to sink this low. But this was my issue last year. I happened to be in a relationship at the time, and I finally got the opportunity to be vulnerable and open up.
Yeah.
Relationship didn't go as well as I hoped for, and eventually my partner at the time was unfaithful, and it really, really just completely destroyed me.
Yeah, it
Um,
really messed with you, eh?
Oh, 100%, because, I thought that I had worked with my issues of attachment and boundaries and all that, and I had let him in so much 100% that it just basically, between that and other life stressors, what happened was I ended up drinking so much that I wanted to hang myself, and I actually tried, right? Now, this happened, and I began to self-harm that same night too. And what broke my heart and what caused me to awaken from that darkness, I believe, was the fact that my children were in the apartment at the time. And I had lost completely vision of anything. I lost any care for anything. And I just went in there and did it. And I remember I kind of blacked out a few times, but the next thing I remember, I was lying in bed and my children were crying. And the next thing I remember, I was in the hospital. So I think that for me, that experience was like, ooh, it was just, I could not go further than that because
Yeah.
they
Well, like
didn't.
seeing your kids crying and stuff over top of you would probably just break your heart alone, you know, like I know if I did that, like I remember having to call the ambulance on myself and having my daughter one night too, and that was back in 2018, and I never forget that night, but I was so scared because of all the stuff I'd done to myself too, and I never want to see her like that again. Thank God she was sleeping at the time, but
Mhm.
I was able to call my brother. But yeah, like I'm glad I don't have to go back to those days anymore. And I am present in my kids' life and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
sounds like you are as well now today.
For sure. And I think, when people hear the word awakening or, transformation, in
Epiphany,
one.
whatever.
That's right. It seems a lot of people think like it's like, oh, you feel the heavens and
Yeah,
you're, oh,
Mother Teresa's lifting you up.
no, no, you actually go to hell,
No,
and
I know.
you face your worst fears and the worst things that you could ever think of. And from those depths is where you come out and you are aware of what you should be doing, and to create a better life for yourself, to experience joy. So because of that experience, and let me tell you something, terrible happened that day. So that day when I tried to hurt myself, it was Saturday, and then on Sunday, I received a text from work saying that we have an important meeting on Monday. So when I came out of the hospital on Sunday, I make sure that I was ready to work on Monday because it's my responsibility. And I wasn't going to take a couple days for my mental health or anything like that. When I arrived on Monday, we were told that one of my best friends at work had passed on Saturday, the same day that I tried to hurt myself to end my life. That same day, he had passed out of a brain aneurysm. So it made me reflect on, here I was being ungrateful about the life that I've been given, and here he was enjoying everything,
Yeah,
and
and
then
just
he
something
was thinking,
unexpected
okay,
happens.
that's right. So it was quite the lesson for me.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Hmm.
So, how did you get into your career then? The career you're in, you're a motivational speaker, you're peer support helper at the organization you work for. So, what is it you do then?
So I provide peer support. I also conduct like psychosocial education workshops. I do a lot of public speaking, not only for my work, but for myself on the side. And the reason that I turn into this career venture, it was because I spent 7 years in a relationship that was very abusive psychologically, and towards the end, it became physically abusive. And when I needed the resource and I needed to reach out and for help, I was pretty much embraced by my community in Manitoba, where I lived at the time, and here in Ontario. And when I saw the difference that it made to my life and the life of my children, I figured that if I got myself to the point where can put my 2 feet on the ground and overcome my challenges, I can too offer the same help for others.
That's amazing. So did you go to school for what you're doing then, or did you just sort of learn along the way?
No, I actually enrolled myself in college. First, when I came here, this was 2013 when I came from Manitoba. The shelter that I was staying with my children paid for a Greyhound to bring me back to my family here in Brampton.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, so after putting myself into the hospital for 2 months and a half of cognitive behavior therapy, I was ready to apply to college and take the social service worker course.
Nice. So do you suggest the CBT for any others that are going through things like you or other things in life and stuff like that? Like I've heard great things about it. What is that all about?
So cognitive behavior therapy, it helps you break down your thought patterns, and it helps you question why you're thinking that way, and it helps you convert those in solutions that are more positively influencing your life.
Almost like a mindset shift then, eh?
That's right. That's right. And but there's not only that. There's so many other alternative for therapies, dialectical behavior therapy, compassion focused therapy. So it really is about um, your own research in choosing whatever fits for you much better.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
what made you get into we had talked earlier, but
Mhm.
well, the psychedelics and stuff like that. Well, what do you see as a benefit from those and stuff like that that other people could use or that are in your situation or were in your situation?
Mhm.
How could
Well,
they benefit from them?
yeah, so from having been experienced into taking medication, so I spent, I think, about 8 years taking not over the counter, just prescribed medication, anti-anxiety, antidepressants.
Yeah.
And what that did for me is I put on a lot of weight. Besides the weight, I became like a zombie for
Yeah, they
years.
come with all these other side effects too, like you're
Oh,
saying.
exactly.
Sorry to cut you off, but
Exactly.
like myself too, and that's why I went to did my research with the CBD and stuff like that because I want to get rid of these suicidal thoughts or all these like bad thoughts that I was having, and oh, well, just take this, take that, but
Hmm.
it just amplified it by 10 or 100, like some of the thoughts and feelings I was getting, and then my moods would change and stuff like that, especially on Seroquel, man. Oh man, I will never go back to that ever again. I'm grateful to get off that, but that was nightmare just coming off that stuff for sure. Like 4 or 5 days of pure hell weaning off it,
For sure, for sure.
and just like the sweats you get and stuff like that. So I'm so grateful to find the CBD, and then you're going to talk about the psychedelics and stuff too. Like,
For sure. I think my experience, all medical practitioners that have tried to help me have essentially just prescribed things for me without the suggestion of recovery using therapies.
well, and
Uh,
that's the same with my psychiatrist too, and I'll touch on that too. Same thing. Well, I go to him. Oh, just take this, take that. Well, what the fuck is this?
exactly, exactly.
Like, and I didn't like any of the side effects the Seroquel gave me. I knew about Seroquel because, I'd use it to go to sleep after because I always use uppers in my active addiction and stuff like that, and that's not totally opposite. It'll knock you out cold if you take enough of it, but you
Exactly.
wake up and feel like a zombie, like you were saying too. And I just didn't like that feeling. It's like I was operating like a robot through my whole day at work. And
For sure. I think it takes away your sense of purpose. Like just from personal experience, because when I started to take medication, I remember feeling the soothing sensation that I wasn't 100% in a state of anxiety all the time.
for sure,
But whenever my kids would come and hug me, I wouldn't feel that intense connection that
I
you're
didn't
supposed
even
to
feel
feel.
like exactly like you too. Like my kids, I would be on all these medications, and my kids, like you just said too, my daughter would come hug me, especially my daughter. My son's a little older, so you know the way they get when they get older. Don't touch me.
Yeah.
but but and same thing. Like, do I have to hug you? That's the way I felt. Like, I
Yeah,
didn't care.
exactly.
But now today, I wake up. She calls me every morning. A video call every morning because I can't see her right now with everything going on and stuff like that, which I respect. But
Mhm.
it's nice just to have that sense of feeling back and sense of self will almost.
For sure. And like I said, it really plays with your purpose because you're functioning almost like a zombie. All your desires, even your sexual desires and drives just completely go
Oh, I
away.
know all too well
Yeah.
about that. And then when me and my partner start reading into it, yep, that's it. It's
Yeah.
It's great now, that's all I have to say. But
For sure, for sure. So like it does soothe the anxiety piece and it takes the depression a little bit, but it keeps you in a bubble where you forget to experience the joy that life is supposed to bring based on what you're doing, what you focus on, your purpose, your passions. They all just go away and you're just living without that. And so when I realized that it was actually causing me harm, because what would happen is when I started experiencing anxiety and depression again, I would go back to the doctor and all he would do is give me a higher dose, right?
yeah,
Um, and so when I went to the hospital in 2013 and I put myself through the CBT therapy, I began to wean myself out of the medication. But then I started exercising, I started eating better. I began getting
those
into.
two alone, they help with your mental health, with your depression, anxiety, and that's proven facts and stuff like that. I know that for myself too.
For sure, for sure. And I dropped the weight. I remember at the time I was 240 pounds and I was just, in a state of, I didn't know who I was anymore, because I would look at myself in the mirror and figure like, who have I become? I didn't recognize myself once I got off the medication. And so I just made make the commitment to better myself without the need of pharmaceuticals. And I began looking into holistic ways to help myself. And then I learned about meditation, mindfulness, and neuroplasticity, which is basically transforming the chemistry of your brain based on shifting your thoughts from negative to positive.
For sure.
um, yeah, so and once I started taking care of myself and I was in college learning all about social work, this is when my healing began. But
From years earlier of all the abuse you went through and stuff, or just everything you went through is what you mean?
Yeah, healing and everything, because I had before then I was in an abusive relationship for 7 years.
Yeah,
So, and I came from a broken home, and with all my life, I did not want that to happen to me. And yet it happened in such a drastic manner that I had to heal from that as well. And at the same time, provide a good environment for my children to thrive and grow in. So it was very, very difficult, but I think the only way that I have done and gone through this, it wouldn't have happened if I didn't have the support from my family, from workers. And a lot of times I know that people kind of shut themselves um, within their own space because they're too afraid to ask for help.
yeah.
Maybe some people feel like they don't want to bother, but
And
you.
why is that lots of people are afraid to ask for help? I find that today too. Like
Mhm,
lots of people, even close friends of mine, they're afraid to ask for help. Even though they know what I'm going through and stuff like that. And I
mhm.
just tell them, if you reach out, here's my phone number, but you got to do the work though. You know what I mean? I can
But
plant the seed, but you got to make it grow.
for sure, I think that has to do a lot with lack of self-love and self-worth. And I
Probably
think
even tie in self-image there too.
that's right, right,
Yeah.
that's right. And a lot of people confuse self-esteem with self-worth. And so, for example, I struggled with that for a long time. I developed good self-esteem after all of my healing, and I was thinking to myself, well, I have this skill now. I've gone to college. I know how to do this. I can do that. My self-esteem is good. I feel good about myself. But whenever a situation came up that something triggered me in a different way, my self-worth will go completely down. So I started asking myself, why is it that if my self-esteem is just thriving, why do I still feel so low, or why do I still struggle with ups and downs? It was because as much as I thought the skill was there in certain areas, that had nothing to do with what I thought about myself as my worth on in my environment in general. So then I had to shift from self-esteem to do a lot of work on self-worth. And that was where the ayahuasca ceremonial retreat did for me. It showed me that I really need to focus on that, and that was the root of
So did
everything.
you recently do that then, or how long ago did you do that treatment?
So it was in October 2019. that I
Okay, so
did.
most recently, was that in Ontario or did you do that out west or?
It was in Ontario.
Okay.
Ontario, yeah. I was connected by somebody from BC, and so it's practiced in Ontario, but not advertised. So you have to go through a network of people in order to
Yeah.
qualify and do an assessment of your mental health and your physical health. And it takes a while to get there. And you cannot be taking any other medication.
So you have
Uh,
to be completely clean off of everything then, eh?
that's right. That's right.
And
Even
why is that?
well, because there can be interactions with whatever is in your system with
Oh,
the
okay.
yeah,
Makes
because
sense
it's
then.
like a really strong amount of DMT that you're taking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're watched by doctors then as well, eh? Do
Oh,
what
yeah.
during this process or whatever they like, are you hooked up to wires? What is it then?
So basically, it's a ceremonial practice where everybody is in a group, lying down on mats. The lights are off, and the people that conduct the ceremony are people who have been trained for years in the practice because it's an ancient practice from the Shipibo tradition from Peru.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
what I was gonna say. I thought it was from South America originally.
yes, there's many other practices. There's like the Iboga from Africa,
Yeah,
and
that's the other one. That's the one I was trying to
yeah,
tell you about earlier. That out and that's the friend that went out there and that helps treat heroin addicts and stuff. They say so.
yeah, that's right. And there's data on the benefits of recovery from this, but due to not being not legal drugs in Canada, it's really difficult for people to access this.
Yeah,
But there's a lot of information out there. There's a recent movie that has come out called Dosed. It's a documentary on
I
the
that's on Netflix, I think.
I
Or
don't
no?
know. I'm not sure if it's on Netflix. I purchased it recently, but it just basically takes a person struggling with addiction into the process of what it took for from her to start the recovery process, and 2 years later, where she is right now.
Yeah, I've
And that
saw
gives you a
like
glimpse.
write-ups and like reports and stuff like that on all these things, and it's pretty wild. Like, and they've even like given amounts that are crazy to like younger people that have gone through like sexual assaults like yourself and stuff like that, and they've
Right.
transformed them like in the matter of no time sort of thing, like giving them DMT and I think even
Yeah.
LSD and stuff like that, like all these different types of psychedelics and stuff, and it's just done wonders for lots of these people.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think the importance of that is the fact that we're in this body functioning every day and we carry the pain from our experiences and our trauma. But when you're in the state of um, feeling the effects of psychedelic, you suddenly look at yourself from outside your body, from a different perspective. And you realize that the person that is inhibiting this body is actually consciousness, right? So you let go of you stop carrying the pain that you had been carrying all your life and start focusing on just appreciating that we're connected to everything on this planet, to humans, to animals, to nature, to the cosmos. So you gain this whole new appreciation for the awareness that you are, rather than the meat and the bones on your body and functioning in a carnal kind of level.
Yeah, so it gives you a whole new perspective really on life almost.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So you're into other things too. Like I see you're into drawing art and stuff like that too. And your pictures really tell a story. And why are they so dark, all of them?
Well, this is the funny thing. So I right now I see a psychotherapist once a week, and it's great because whenever I show him a piece of my art, he'll tell me what his perspective is, and I end up learning something about myself that I wasn't trying to convey, but it came out because
Yeah.
I can relate to what he's saying. The reason why is I think um, people sometimes we are afraid to face the darker sides of our psyche, the
Yeah.
darker sides of who we are, and so we do everything in our power to avoid that. We become very busy with work, we become distracted uh, by using substances or getting into wrong relationships, because we're always running away from that darker aspects of who we are. But if we become friends with those darker aspects that makes us who we are, then we can have some kind of balance between light and dark. Everything is light and dark, everything is negative and positive, everything is black and white. You can see it in the yin yang. in many other cultural practices. You can see the heaven and hell. There's always the minus and the plus. There's always that balance of both.
For sure.
So, yeah, so in order to create balance within ourselves, I think we have to become friends with our own darkness. And
So
I do
do you think
find,
some of your pictures that you draw are from your past though?
oh yeah, like I
Darker
said,
times sort of thing?
for sure. So for example, I grew up looking at a lot of things, like I was saying in the past, like the TV programming on the news. You
Yeah.
know, I would walk from school to home every single day, and sometimes people would be run over by cars and left on the road until the ambulance came to pick them
This is
up.
back in Peru?
Oh yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
I would see those things. So when I grew up, my sense of just normalcy was to be attracted to things that were a little darker than usual.
Yeah.
Um,
Because I guess
so
you were used to seeing this stuff growing up.
For sure, for sure. And when I was 18, I began working at a funeral home, helping with embalming. Later in the years, I began getting into taxidermy and things that were just more of the norm for me. My development in childhood brought me to those experiences. But as an adult, I saw it more as something artistic. I turned that and made it work for me.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what have you done to cope in a positive way over the last couple of years now, like with your mental health and stuff like that? How do you cope positively if you tell the audience?
I think is every you have to be able to explore whatever calls, whatever calls for you. So one thing that worked for me was getting into ritualistic practices, right? Everybody has rituals. When they wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you have your coffee, you drive to a certain area. We do things, but we don't see them as rituals, but they are, because if we don't do them, we can't start a day with our coffee, for example.
Yeah.
So I began getting into the study of how I can practice things not only by words but by actions that would help me develop a structure that would make me feel joy and help me with my well-being. So I started looking into history of rituals. So and I have my incense and I smudge and I do positive affirmations. I do
That's a
little
good one. I,
prayers.
I I do that every morning as well and write down my goal and stuff like that too. So
For sure. And the power of words is so immense. And I don't think we realize how much magic we can find in the power of words.
I think it really gets in your subconscious. Like I write this. It's not the same goal every day, but I write it out as if I've already done it. Even though I haven't done it, you write it out as if you've already done it, and that's how you do your positive affirmations and your goal. That's what I do every day. It brought me to
Exactly.
the point. I'm going to be on time to release anything. Episodes and anything like that. You know what I mean? That's how I get goals, set goals, little mini goals and stuff in life now.
No, for sure. And the problem with our society is due to our responsibilities in our own personal jails in our minds. We get into the point that we just work mindlessly all the time as a state of being. We don't take the time to be aware of, is this, I'm sipping this coffee, do I feel the texture of the mug, do I feel the warm liquid down my throat? Like, we don't practice these things, we just do it, right? And
Yeah.
so what happens is we just become so unaware of our bodies and our surroundings that we don't take the time to take a break and focus. And when you take the time and take the break to focus, you'll start saying better things to yourself. So we run into this where we're always insulting ourselves and not realizing we're doing it. Like if you drop something, oh, I'm so stupid, I can't believe I did that. Or if you talk to somebody, oh, they probably think I'm awkward. So you're always telling you this stuff and you
It's
believe
only
it.
as awkward as you make it. I've heard that saying many times.
Exactly. But at the same time, I know with the whole practice of continuously shifting my thoughts to negative to positive in talking as or being thankful as if things have already happened,
Yeah.
definitely help with my self-worth. So if I feel that I'm in a situation where I may feel a little awkward, now it doesn't impact me the way that it used to. If I felt like I was being awkward, I'll just say, well, that's just me. What are you gonna do? You know,
Yeah.
I don't dwell in the issues any longer.
And you
Yeah,
can't really, if you keep dwelling on the issues, you'll never get past whatever that issue is either, you know?
that's
So that
right.
for sure. So
Yeah.
if there was one thing that you would do differently again, what would it be and why?
Do differently. I don't think I would do anything differently. And in as much as weird as this sound, I think I am so grateful and thankful for all the experiences that I had in all my life, because had I not gone through that, for all that pain and all that trauma, I wouldn't been able to feel like I needed to search for who I really was. I wouldn't have the need, that is immense need to find my purpose. I would have just kind of coasted through life, I think. But because of all that, and being so submerged into my own nightmare, um, I, I I felt the need to reach out for that light that I knew that existed. So I wouldn't change a thing, to be honest. I'm just grateful for everything.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
So can you tell the audience, three positive or, uplifting things that they could do to take care of themselves for self-care and stuff like that, please?
For sure. So one thing that I would suggest is being more mindful of your body, because essentially, like I mentioned before, we are consciousness, right? Yeah, so we are whenever we have a thought, who's listening to that thought, right? So taking the time to be mindful of your bodies. And one of the things that I do is basically just sit down or lie down and start feeling what it feels like to be in my body. So feel the skin on your hands, on your palms. Focus on that while you close your eyes, and you'll notice that there's a tingling sensation in just feeling the body that you're in. And then if you were to feel that sensation all through your arms, through your torso, through your legs, to your feet, you're going to experience just being inside yourself, and it's going to cause you to take a break from all the busy chatter that we experience every day. So practicing mindfulness and being in your body would be one. Um, the second one is being mindful of the things that you tell yourself. If you're having negative thoughts about your self-worth, about your physical appearance, um, try to do your best to tell yourself otherwise. So if you truly believe that, for example, I mean, all women go through this. We look at ourselves in the mirror. It's like, oh, I could lose a little bit of weight here. My nose could be smaller. Just even if you don't believe it, look in the mirror and tell yourself, I am beautiful. I am perfect the way I am. And I love this about myself. So kind of start complimenting yourself. So those are two things. So mindfulness and watching the thoughts that you're telling yourself. And third would be develop a ritual that works for you. So part of my ritual on a daily basis is to smudge my room, and to smudge myself and ask whatever you believe in, whether you believe in a God or whether you believe in whatever Mother Earth, just ask for that help, and ask for your day to be blessed, and also express gratitude. So it would be, if I had three things, like you said, it would be mindfulness, expressing gratitude, and the other one was focus on what you're telling yourself on a daily basis.
Thank you. That's awesome. That's
Mhm.
three great things for sure. And I got a couple random questions I like to ask at the end, so
Sure.
what's your go-to order at your favorite hometown restaurant?
Oh my gosh, that's super easy. Nachos.
Nice.
I love
You're a
nachos.
simple date.
100%. Give me a beer and some nachos, and I'm good to go anywhere.
That's awesome. Uh, what do you wish you had known when you first started on this journey? That you know today, but you didn't know back then.
Um, I wish I would have known that it was going to be very painful.
Fair enough.
That it was going to be emotionally painful. Yeah.
Yeah, like all those emotions coming up and like when you're starting to pick apart what happened, sort of thing, eh?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, what are you curious about right now in this instant?
In this instant, like right now or in general as today?
Today, I guess. Yeah, today's good.
Okay. Um, I'm doing more learning about an author called Demian Eccles, and he talks about the importance of ritualistic magic practices. So I'm very curious about learning the history of traditions in cultural practices when it comes to rituals.
Okay, thank you. And is there anything I should have asked but didn't?
Um, Maybe one thing, okay, so yeah, before I leave, I wanted to make the point that due to what's happening right now, all services in person are obviously, not y- people cannot reach that right now.
Yeah.
So the importance of if anybody's alone at home, or anybody would like to know more about any types of services regarding mental health and wellness, I have so many things that I could share with anyone that needs it. So if you were to reach me through my Instagram account, just to ask.
And what's your Instagram account so the fans can know, the audience can know?
My Instagram is at Emelyn K. So it's at EMELYNK. And just send me a message, and whatever it is, a resource that you need or anything, I can possibly guide you to the best place for you to try, or I can help you with anything.
And you're readily available on there. You answer questions pretty quickly too. So
Yes,
yeah,
100%. Yeah.
that's amazing. Thank you so much for your time today and
You're
having you on the
welcome.
show.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Thank you.